I'm a hugger. We're doing it. Sony Ben, Sony Ben, Sony Ben. How the hell are you?
Oh, we're awesome.
Introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm John Garvin. I'm the creative director.
I'm Jeff Ross. I'm the game director on Days Gone.
It sounds insulting, but stick with me. What a difference a year makes. Last year you guys came out, you showed that first cinematic trailer, Whitwer on the bike, looked great. All right, zombies, we're shooting zombies, that's cool. And then this demo this year, I was like, I'm all in. Because last year you guys had talked a little bit about systems, mechanics, open world, all that jazz. I was so blown away with this demo, and then you went behind closed doors today.
Yeah, and I got to see a bit more of it, and it's what blew my mind was the demo that everybody saw on the PlayStation Showcase. That was awesome. The demo we saw was the same mission, but it was snowing because the season was different, or just the weather was different, and it totally changed the gameplay of what we were doing. So the scene that you saw where there was the rope that kind of choked him out and he like fell off his motorcycle, in this thing he totally avoided that and went around, killed the guys, cut the rope so he didn't have to deal with that. And the ambushes he dealt with and the situations were totally different. And I was like, this is so much more dynamic than I expected it to be.
Yeah, and that's really what we wanted to emphasize this year is just the open world dynamic systems.
Yeah.
So, things like you said, last year we showed the Horde, which is hundreds and hundreds of freakers, and it was a life and death sort of chase for Deacon just running for his life. This year we wanted to show how you could, and I think this is a term Jeff came up with, weaponizing the Horde. You can actually use enemies against each other because, we introduced, marauders, so human enemies this year. And just the idea that it's an open world system where everything's alive, everything has its own needs, everything has its own faction, and it can be used against each other.
Yeah, so if we said a lot of mumbo jumbo last year, like system and some blah, 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 really what we were trying to say was it's a deadly world that's going to try to kill you a lot of different ways.
Yeah. That's a good thing that you have.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of that, like another thing I noticed about the demo is it is extremely violent in a way that kind of makes you feel uncomfortable, but that's the point. Like, this is obviously an apocalypse, obviously things are really bad, but seeing some of the death animations, there was a moment in the demo I saw behind closed doors where after he cut the rope, he killed one of the guys, runs up on the other guy, like shanks him in the spleen, he falls back, and he's like, please, no, no, and then he just stomps on his face and his head explodes, and I was like, whoa, okay. But I mean, that's the world that they're in.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that we really wanted to do, and you can see that kind of happening right here, is this is that same ambush that on the media showcase demo, Deacon was distracted by runners, which are infected wolves, and so he's dealing with that, and then he gets clotheslined, and just bam, he's on the ground, and these guys are on him. And in the alternate demo that you saw, he's able to go around them, and it's like what he tells that guy when he's begging for his life. He's like, no, and he stomps him, and he says, you just paid the price.
Yeah.
You had your chance, and that's the world we really wanted to kind of explore was how, it's like how savage it can be, how brutal it can be, but keeping it real. So, we're trying to keep it as realistic as we can.
Another thing that surprised me was how open the game was. Like in the demo I saw, he's riding his motorcycle around, and it was a really vast open worlds, and it seemed like there was a lot going on where even if it wasn't like side missions and things like that, there was like world building going on. Like there was a tree with a freaker attached to it by a chain, and one of the marauders was giving him shit and kind of like, oh, you can't get me, and then you as a player can shoot the chain, the freaker goes and kills the dude, and he's just like, you shouldn't have been talking shit. You got shot.
And we love that moment because it's one of those things where it shows the depravity of the world and how, we stomped a guy's face in, but there's no great people left in this world. I mean, people who got this far did some nasty stuff. So, and these guys would have killed Deacon if he didn't get the upper hand on him. So, but the depravity that we can witness, we also want to make that interactive, which is why, the player had the tools to turn that situation around. And again, it's not a prescribed way of doing it. The player can choose to engage it or not, or try other techniques, but we just want to give the player a set of tools where he can be as violent as he needs to be in the context of this world, because it's a kill or be killed to the extreme.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, it's open. That's the thing. So we really wanted to show off that this is one small part of the Cascade Wilderness, which is one of the regions in the game. And, Copeland's Camp, which is where the demo starts, is one of the encampments where you find, survivors who are sort of law-abiding. So not everybody's depraved, probably. There are still some people who have a shred of decency, a shred of humanity. And, that's kind of one of the things the game is about, is that you see Deacon's character at the start when Copeland is telling him, hey, a supplierman just got hit, we got to go get these guys. And he's like, not my problem.
Yeah.
You know, and if that were the whole story, then this would be like, why the hell would you want to play as this guy?
Yeah.
Right? But instead, we're like, no, there's a shred of humanity in there, and he, you know, when it's his friends, and that's sort of where the MC comes into it, is brotherhood and loyalty, and there are these sort of deep traits within Deacon, and then that's kind of what we want to explore over the course of the game, is like, you know, why do you want to survive in a world like this? What gives you hope? What makes you want to continue?
What is, I mean, from what you can tell us, the narrative of this game? Because is the MC still intact? Is that how he's been surviving? What are his driving motivations? Because that's always the thing when you get a bleak landscape like this, right? Where it is, everybody's a horrible person. Well, why would I want to hang out?
And it's 2 years after day 0, right?
Yes.
Where this starts.
Yeah, so so again, we set it 2 years after this event, the pandemic. We're really not going into a lot of detail about that yet, but in terms of the timing and the setting of it, a lot of post-apocalyptic experiences are 20 years on or 20,000 years on, and we wanted it to be just after. So there's still a lot there's still a lot of resources that can be found and gathered. The roads aren't complete, the buildings aren't completely destroyed.
Sure.
They're still mostly intact, and that's kind of why we chose that setting. And and then the same thing with the high desert. Like you can see, it's snowing like crazy here, and the reason is because in the high desert it can be July. The high desert is where Ben's studio is. Pure coincidence.
Right, what you know.
But it can be snowing in July. It's very extreme. We get extreme weather. We have extreme all kinds of environments within a very, very small area. So forests and deserts and lava tube caves. They can all be in a very small area.
Yeah. I was also really impressed by, so going back to what we were talking about with the different skill trees and stuff, where there's the motorcycle, and over time you can build that up so you can like drive farther and go faster and all that. But in addition to that, there's like that detective mode-esque thing where you kind of can see the tracks, and that as you play through, that kind of gets a little bit more advanced, and you can mark the different enemies and like see where they are in different ways. And what else is there like that?
Well, one of the things you can see on the alternate path is that we show a lot more of the motorcycle going off-road, burning fuel, taking damage. So you've got one bike in this world, and it's Deacon's bike. It's part of his personality, and you can't whistle for it to come to you. You've got to keep tabs on it. You got to find it. People want it, and you got to manage. You got to maintain it too, and you got to upgrade it. So that's part of the motivation for him working with these camps, is that they can help provide some of the upgrades that he's going to need to survive.
Yeah, we really wanted to, again, the vision mode you're talking about, we call that survival vision. Okay. And then when you bring up this wheel, it's a survivor wheel. So we wanted to give Deacon a whole range of tools and abilities that, again, are part of our experience system and part of your ability to like choose how you want to play the game. So you can do it stealth, and like in the alternate path that you saw, you can run and gun. Mm-hmm. There's just you can play it the way you want to play it.
Yeah, and so with all the enemies, it seems like, so there's the Marauders out there, there's the Freakers, which are the zombie-style things, but then there's also the infected animals. So we saw wolves in the demo, but then there's also that bear at the end. Is there any other animals out there?
So yeah, you saw, we call it the Rager, so that's the infected bear. You saw the Runners, which are infected wolves, which, by the way, if Deacon hadn't shot that wolf on the media showcase demo, it would have knocked him off his bike. So that's kind of another example of how we say the world comes for you. And last year we showed the Horde, we showed Swarmers, we showed Newts, which were adolescents when they were infected. And I think in the alternate path demo, we also showed Crows.
Interesting. What I also liked is how this demo that we saw kind of took last year's, and like instead of it being this massive swarm of hundreds of them, we saw kind of just smaller mobs of them, and you could kind of control them and shift them using noise by like in the demo I saw, there was a dude, you put a bear trap down, you threw a rock to get him to go over to it, he got caught, and he started screaming, and all of his friends were like, dude, shut up, you gotta shut up, they're gonna come. He didn't shut up because he just got his leg bit by a freaking bear trap, and he gets shot in the head by his friend. And I was just like, that is insane.
But the messed up thing is that was the right play, too, for the friend to do.
Yeah,
and that's our world.
And it's such a cool use of then seeing the swarm kind of come in, and you as a character just kind of stealth hiding in the grass and just letting them take over for you.
Yeah, the Horde is real, and it's, like I said, it's hundreds of freakers. And early on in the game,
1,000,
you don't
by the way, at least. It's more than a couple hundred.
You don't mess with them early on in the game. You run for your life. That's what you do. But swarms are way more common. So what you see in the media showcase demo, when Deacon goes through that cleft in the rocks and he's like, "Hey, this is a swarm," that can be engaged really, really early on. They're way more common. They're still almost as deadly as a horde. And then you saw also when he was looking over the railing down at that valley below, again, that just, on the one hand, it shows how big our world is, because you can actually explore all of that. But it also shows you how dangerous it is, because these swarms are everywhere.
Yeah.
My question would be this: you debut it last year. You get to see chuckleheads like us talk about it nonstop. What's the biggest thing people have gotten wrong about the game? I feel like the more we talk about it, right, and the more we see of it, the more my impression of it changes, right? Where it goes from so many people are like, oh, it looks a lot like Last of Us. The more we talk about it, I'm like, this seems a lot more like Horizon. And then what for you is the biggest misconception?
That everything's fake. Last year we did the horde thing and it was live. I mean, it was the real deal. And you just can't win with this crowd. Or when you play it one way, people think it's linear and that's the only way. And that's why this year we wanted to show the alternate path, where it's like, no, this is the same victory conditions, but we let the player go at him any way he wants. And that's the thing I want to message more than anything else, is that it's play it your way, figure out a way that you like to play it, and just do it, and the game will respond.
Well, for me, I think it's, we're, number one, we're flattered because, all these games that we're being compared to, we're huge fans of those games.
Sure.
And we were in development alongside, most of them. And we're gamers. So what we want to do is craft an experience that, at least for me, I want to craft an experience that I haven't played before. So I think probably the biggest misconception is that, if we're trying to are we trying to create an experience that's real? Are we trying to ape something or mimic something? And that, that's just not the case. We're trying to create Days Gone, which for us is a brutal, open world, dynamic system. And to me, it feels very different than most of the games that I've played up to date.
I think the other, interesting thing coming away from this, right, is talking about my misconception of it, you guys doing it, but then you had a really interesting story from behind closed doors where they were asking you, like, how does all this work? Like, what's the biggest change from last year? And what I liked from what I heard from Tim was the answer was like, well, nothing's changed. There hasn't been a drastic. We're just building on the systems we have. Is that been for you the story of the development of Days Gone, having this idea and then just because we always make fun of Eric, right, of how long it's taken for you guys to put out another game, and where is it Sony been, and where is Sony been? And it's one of those, like, when you look at this and you see and start talking about, when you talk about the mechanics, you see it on the screen, it seems like you've been working on one thing for a long time and you want it to be really fucking good.
I think one of the things that hopefully is this year and last year is that one of our original goals was to make a AAA console quality in terms of the characters and the cinematics and the environments, because the PS4 and the PS4 Pro let us do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, so the production values are really, really high, probably much higher than they need to be for an open world game. And we really wanted to deliver on that, not just the way it looks, but also the way it plays, the amount of detail in the AI and the amount of detail in the missions and the jobs. So yeah, and it's a big game. Right, so it's like any other open world game. It's massive. There's a lot to do, and there's a lot of story to be told, which we're not really talking about yet. But yeah, it's just going to take a while to get there.
Yeah, it's very exciting stuff. Last year I was interested, but now I'm totally sold. I think that mixing that crazy mob stuff with the more open stuff, where there's a bunch of different ways you can go about things, this is going to be a really fun game.
Awesome, thank you.
So now, when's it coming out?
We're not talking about that, Greg.
Good try.
Nice try, dude. Nice try.
Damn it, nice try.
It's all him. Well, thank you guys for coming by. Tim,
Yep.
you had fun watching it today.
I did.
I had fun watching it. This is one of my approved games, so I'm going to give it another
There we go.
roll there, too.
2 for 2.
2 for 2. Cracking open the Fragile box. Pass it over.
There we go.
Thank you guys for coming.
Congratulations, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Thanks,
you.
guys. Everybody should come by the Sony booth and see the alternate playthrough in person if they want to. It's right over
Definitely.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Well, thank you. Take care, guys.
here. All right, thank you.
Now awkwardly leave the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Days Gone. Sony Ben. Eric Jensen made it all by himself. Woo. These guys were up here taking credit for no reason.